Welcome to The Cage on Sports Night Live. We've got another fantastic show for you this week. This week, my in-studio guest, one of the best matchmakers in the business, Jude Samuel. Jude, really, really glad to see you.
Nice to see you. Nice
and
to
also, my partner in crime, as always, number 48, Mr. Brad Wharton. Brad, good to see you as well. I missed you last week.
Yeah, it's good to be back on this side of the table for a change. The spotlight's on you now, my friend.
Yeah, you don't like this chair, do you?
Yeah. No, I can take or leave it.
Yeah. Really big week in MMA. Lots and lots to talk about today. We've got Frank Trigg's going to come on Skype in a little while. I went to the I Am Bruce Lee premiere last night. It was a really, really good film. Maybe we'll touch on that a bit. Everything going on in the week as well. UFC this past weekend. What were your thoughts?
Another great card from the UFC. Really, really impressed as usual. You know, that they've continually knocked them out of the park. The undercard was fantastic. Yeah. The main event, I think a lot of people maybe didn't appreciate it as much because it's one of those fights where, you know, possibly one of the most hyped fights the UFC have ever put on.
Sure.
And because it wasn't, you know, two guys standing in front of each other like Henderson and Shogun, I don't think a lot of people appreciated it as much as, you know, the real hardcore fans who can appreciate the technique involved.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, but what a fight.
Well, I think Jones, you know, I mean, certainly everybody's, you know, has he proved his dominance? He looks unbeatable, but I think credit to Rashad, he took him 5 rounds, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the first guy to do that really to Jon Jones, and the first guy really to hit him hard, I think. You know, Machida tagged him a couple of times, but Rashad got a good kick in at one point. He got the other hand right in, unfortunately, couldn't, you know, put him down with it, but definitely rocked Jon Jones. And I think now those questions have all been answered. You know, people said, can Rampage knock him out? Maybe Machida can outmaneuver him, maybe Rashad can take him down. The answer's, you know, no. None of those people can do those things. Yeah. Jon Jones is the best fighter in the world right now.
Yeah. What do you think, Jude? Jon Jones?
Yeah, Jon is he's amazing. He's amazing, actually. I think this fight actually was one of the ones that basically, you know, Rashad was the opponent to kind of test him in certain areas that he hasn't been tested before.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the question is what's left for Jon Jones. And I know they've matched him against Dan Henderson, but I can't see anybody that Jon has, you know, fought before, you know, Dan doing anything else that, you know, any of the guys that Jon's
already ready for that big
yeah, he's totally going to be ready. But you know, you never know if Dan. But yeah, really, really good fight. It was a really good display of Muay Thai, you know, especially jab, elbow, boom. You know,
those elbows were amazing. Weren't they?
It was really good, and it's really nice and technical and stuff. And I think, you know, as Brad said, probably a lot of people didn't appreciate it because it was one of the most hyped fights, you know, the UFC have ever had. But at the same time, you know, you got two really good pugilists coming together who know each other extremely well, you know, and they had to train for that fact, you know, that each other knew what each other was capable of, you know.
Yeah, and interesting as well. I mean, those guys are both top-level wrestlers and didn't go to the ground at all, did they?
No.
Apart from when he pulled guard in the last 30 seconds of the
fight. Just for fun. Yeah. Other fights that were interesting?
I really enjoyed the Ben Rothwell-Brendan Schaub fight. I've been a Ben Rothwell fan for years for some reason. I don't know why. He's just a really nice guy. I used to talk to the guy a lot years and years and years ago, before he was even in the IFL, when he was kind of just on the American regional circuits. I think I got in touch with him on the Sherdog forums recently. He used to post there a lot. And the dude's just such a genuine guy, and he tries so hard. And the shape that he came in for that fight was incredible. I mean, the dude's 260 and looked lean.
Yeah.
And you know, Schaub caught him. You think, oh, it's all over, and then bang, big left hook puts him down, and knockout of the night for me, that one.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that fight was ace. Yeah, and Jude, you're like I said, one of the best matchmakers in the country, I think, in the game today.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Chael a bit. Chael was he was in a bit deep water there. And I think, you know, sort of my view is a lot of guys. I mean, Chael is one of the best that we've got to offer in the UK. I think Chael is a fantastic fighter. And I think a lot of guys don't realize how deep the water is when you get in the UFC, right? And was that too much too soon for him, do you think?
Yeah, you can say that, but, you know, sometimes you get these opportunities that get knocked on your door, and you just got to go and grab them. And that was just one of those situations that, you know, he's offered co-main event of you know, probably one of the biggest fights that's going to happen this year. You know, he'll be a fool not to take that chance. But against you know, Rory is good. Yeah. Rory is very, very, very good. You know, he's just one of those guys who's come up through, you know, MMA and he's just got every single area more or less covered. And basically, you know, when they were standing up, you know, and Chael was effectively winning the striking war, but you know, just the mindset to actually change his strategy mid-flow was just really cool.
Yeah, well,
you know,
GSP said that he's the next GSP, didn't he?
I personally believe that, you know, he could be better.
Yeah.
You know, don't mark my words on it though. I don't want people shooting me down.
No, I mean, these guys come up, and I mean, it's Rashad was like that. You know, when he sort of, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but almost came out of nowhere, and just this supremely talented, athletic guy, and you just think, you know, where does he come from? And I think we see the same thing. These guys just sort of come up all of a sudden. You think, God, there's that much talent, and you know.
Well, this is what we're seeing now with MMA. We're seeing guys who aren't just fighters; they're athletes. Guys who, if they wanted to, could be a great footballer or a great basketball player or a great swimmer or whatever. But MMA is the sport of the moment, and people are seeing MMA as a viable way to make a career. So these athletes are saying, well, you know, maybe I won't try out for the football team, maybe I won't try out for track, I'll do MMA instead. And Roy McDonald's one of those guys. You know, there's no shame for Chael Mills in losing to this dude, because in 5 years' time he will be the GSP of the UFC.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. We were watching this fight with my wife. You know, she's got unique commentary, and we were sat cage side at a Cage Warriors event one night, and Chael Mills was fighting Jake Hecht, and it was a really, really bloody fight. My wife says, "I know who that guy is. He's the guy that bled on us at Cage Warriors." But yeah, I mean, again, it was a bloody fight for Chael. It was a long night for him in the cage, I think.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're right. It was a good performance. It was, you know, when Dan fought GSP, Dan Hardy fought GSP, the same thing. I mean,
Exactly.
You know, Dan was outclassed by GSP for sure, but took him the distance. You know, put in a good effort. I think probably grew his fan base, even though it was lost on his record. You know, compared to.
And this could be a real game changer for Chael as well.
Yeah.
You know, he might take this loss and go home and say, right, this is what I need to work on now to be successful at this level in the UFC. And he'll get another fight, because his first performance was great. You know, he'd be putting a valiant effort there. And we could see a different Chael Mills when he comes back next time.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah. Any other noteworthy fights?
Obviously, we had Torres against the other McDonald, no relation.
Yeah.
What is it with the name McDonald? You know, these guys must be eating something right. Torres, for me, was one of the guys one of the best of all time at one point, I think. You know, a ranked top pound-for-pound fighter before the UFC had the bantamweight division. This guy was ruling the roost in the WEC and elsewhere. And there was a time when people were talking about this guy as like the Fedor of the lower weight divisions. He looked unbeatable.
Yeah.
He had a bit of a rocky road, changed his style up, and then Michael McDonald just doesn't come out of nowhere, because again, this is a kid with a lot of hype, but you know, comes up against this big name in the sport and absolutely wastes him. And I think we're looking at Michael McDonald again as a potential bantamweight champion in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think the WC guys have made a lot of noise in the UFC, haven't they? I mean, every one of them has come in and they've just smashed it. So yeah, really interesting to see these guys that are coming up, and you know, I'll say another promotion, but you know, obviously now part of the UFC, but to see these lighter weight guys and they come in and they just make a lot of noise. So really,
I think
really good.
You know, people were worried about the fact that with these smaller guys, there's not going to be as many knockouts. We're not going to get these dramatic finishes, but you know, McDonald proved that A, that's not the case, and B, you see guys like Brad Pickett in there. I mean,
Exactly.
who cares if a Brad Pickett fight goes 3 rounds? Because it's 3 rounds of entertainment at the end of the day.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
You know, now the flyweight's coming. I'm so chuffed, because I've been watching flyweight guys, you know, in Japan for years, and you think, oh, these fights are so exciting, because these guys can just go for 15 minutes. Yeah. And to see them now in the UFC, you know, making decent money, making the money they deserve, and having this platform where they can be seen by millions is just fantastic.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you about that in a little bit, Jude.
Yeah.
We've got to go to a break. We've got Frank Trigg on the digital wall when we come back.
Okay.
So join us in a couple minutes when we come back on Sports Tonight Live presents The Cage. Welcome back to The Cage on Sports Tonight Live. Next on the digital wall, we've got none other than Frank Trigg. But before we go to Frank, let's have a look at his last fight on BAMMA with John Phillips.
Of James Zikic, and here we go. Southpaws, both men, left-handed in centre ring. Trigg has got to get the takedown and got to get it early. He can allow Phillips to get his hands off here. And Phillips already setting the left cross. Trigg shoots in early, body rocks with him. Gut munching knee from Frank Trigg. And another one from Trigg. Double leg, gets the takedown. That's the script. And Frank Trigg is sticking to it inside the half guard.
That, Mike, is the worst possible start for Phillips. He will have drilled to prevent that and drilled to prevent it, and he's still there. It couldn't have been worse for him at this point in time.
That is the experience of Trigg paying out. He's been doing the hard yards in Las Vegas, sparring his coach Tim Lane, sparring big guys like K1 star Sugar Ray Sefer, and it's held him in good stead so far, here with 55 seconds down in the opening round.
Now, one thing we must say, Phillips' defence on the ground has been improving all the time. At first, when he was winning, he gave little heed to the overall skills of MMA. He relied on his boxing, but he has developed over time. Very good defence, but there's good defence, and then there's Frank Trigg.
Exactly. You have never seen on the record yet of Phillips someone the class, someone the calibre of Frank Trigg. And not only that, Trigg is not going to do any favours to Phillips. Trigg is a nasty fighter. He sends get well letters to hypochondriacs just for fun, and he just about opens a cut. Yes, he does. Over the left eyebrow of Phillips here in the first with a nasty elbow.
And that blood is already flowing. Like you've called it so right so far. This is worrying times for Phillips. That blood is going straight into his eye, and the ref's going to look closely at that because Trigg is letting the bombs go.
Trigg has opened up a money box on the forehead here of Phillips, and he goes to side control. It is domination. It is ownership from Trigg, and the face of Jon Phillips looks like an episode of Dexter. That's a nasty sight here, Malcolm. Blood everywhere, running down the face of Phillips, and Trigg just dominates. Reverse elbow to the thigh, curling knuckles to the ear.
He seems everywhere, Mike. The speed of the transitions were phenomenal.
It is the second coming of Frank Trigg, axed from the UFC in 2010. Breathed new life this year, fighting in Israel last time with a first round win, and now here on BAMMA in London. Another beautiful slicing elbow. He is filleting the forehead of Jon Phillips.
Jon Phillips' face is red. The blood is going into both eyes. Frank Trigg is not happy about being stopped there, Mike. He looked at the referee to say what's going on, but they have to look at those cuts. They're wide. There's more than one, and they are deep.
That was a fantastic fight, and Phillips was on about a 5-win streak there, wasn't he?
Yeah,
All quick first-round stoppages. And this man, Frank, good to see you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
That was a brilliant fight. We just watched your fight with Jon Phillips, and fantastic stoppage there. I was just saying, Phillips was on about a 5-fight win streak at that point, all really early first-round stoppages until he met you that night.
Well, just stylistically, it was just a good matchup. Nothing against Jon. It was just, my style was better, was the style that was going to beat him. I don't like to stand in front of him and try to swing for the fences. That's how you get knocked out, especially with Jon. He's so heavy-handed, and he's a guy that you can beat up for 2.5 rounds, and he clips you at the end of the third round, and you end up getting knocked out. And I really didn't want to go home to a stretcher because I just don't trust your hospitals.
Oh, you've been here before then?
yeah. A little leery over there. So.
Yeah. I know it's really early for you this morning, so I so appreciate you taking the time, coming on the show, and having a chat with us. What's been going on in your life lately?
Not much really. Just kind of sitting at home and hanging out. I have I have my daughter full time. I'm a single dad with my daughter who's 10 in 5th grade. So we're ending up out here. We're ending up the school year. She actually lived in England for a couple of years while her mom and her stepdad were stationed over there. So she's actually pretty excited. I'm coming over there in a couple of weeks because she wants me to go and get some stuff that she can't get here in the States. And then I have my 2 younger boys, my 1-year-old, my 3-year-old, 3 days a week. So I'm pretty much just a stay-at-home dad right now.
Yeah,
that's the majority of what I'm doing.
I have that same problem, not being able to get stuff in the States that I like now that I live over here. So can I send you a list?
Yeah, go ahead. Send me a list and double the money, and I'll be happy to grab it for you.
Yeah. Fair enough.
If we hear now that Frank Trigg's been stopped at the border trying to bring over guns, we're going to blame you.
As far as I understand, guns are, it's my amendment right here in the States. I don't understand why I can't, carry a handgun on my ankle into the airport. Like, I never understood why that's illegal. I don't get it.
We have sticks and whistles over here. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it works so well, too.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have a lower crime rate than we do, so obviously you guys are doing something right. I mean, our crime rate is I think, 50% higher than yours, and we're allowed as citizens allowed to carry weapons of all sorts and fashions, and you guys aren't, and you guys have less crime. So I can complain and make fun of you guys as much as I want, but sticks and whistles seem to work.
Yeah.
Well, we're Brits, our hands are weapons.
Didn't stop Jack the Ripper, but it stops everybody else.
Yeah. Fair enough. So you're coming over in a couple weeks. You're coming over for MMA Show Live, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. We're looking forward to seeing you there. what have you been doing? You know, you've been training. You've been obviously keep yourself fit on a regular regime.
You know, interestingly enough, I haven't really done anything since September. I haven't trained really at all. After I just kind of came home and you know, I turned 40 May 7th. So right after I turned 40, I'll be over for MMA Live Show. You know, I just need to take a little bit of a break and kind of relax a little bit. And now all I'm doing is I'm doing jiu-jitsu with Neil Mellison a couple days a week.
Yeah.
I'm hitting the bag, but I'm not doing any kind of training with Tim Lane. I'm just, you know, doing a little bit of work on my own and lifting and doing a little bit of cardio, and that's all I'm really doing right now. Just trying to let my old body heal up a little bit for some really long-term nagging injuries. Like I hurt my shoulder way back in 1994, and it never really healed correctly. So I'm trying to deal with that, and then trying to deal with some lower back issues. But other than that, really, I've just been kind of taking care of my body and trying to get more commentating jobs and do a lot more color commentating work, and I'm trying to host some major shows whenever I can, and that's really what I've been doing. Like really, as far as working out, I had to really take a break a little bit, really, because my body was just couldn't recover. Like I'm wondering how like guys like Dan Henderson could do it, how Randy Couture could fight for so long, because like I'm not even, you know, I'm only turning 40, and Randy was fighting until he was 46 and 47. I don't know how the hell he does it, you know, how he did it. And Henderson's 2 years older than I am. He's getting ready to fight Jon Jones, and like how is he able to do all that and still be able to keep it together, you know? Yeah,
I got to agree with you. I'm on the wrong side of 40 as well, and it's hard just to get out of bed in the morning. And I don't know how you guys do it, putting your bodies through what you do, and then still.
You know, you have a hard time getting out of bed because your boyfriend's so cute. And so really
oh.
You want to leave a guy that looks that good laying in bed next to you. Of course you want to stay in bed.
Jude's just shaking his head, and he's saying he's not going to tell all the stories about you.
Oh, don't bring me into this, man. That's why I'm quiet.
And Jude was like, hey, go eat at this restaurant. I made weight, and he's like, go eat at this restaurant, And then we wandered around, couldn't find a damn place. And I mean, 'cause you guys have a different style of telling directions, whatever. And we couldn't find it. He finally like, screw it, I'll just come get you. And he got us and brought us over. And he got denied the door, but his wife was like, no, it's okay. And his wife showed up, and they're like, oh yeah, come right in. I'm like, what? Hold on a second. What? Like, Jude is supposed to be the guy. Like, what the hell happened? So we get in there, and and forgive me, I forget the name of the restaurant, but the kitchen was closed.
8 members club.
And his wife was like, no, you guys are going to stay open. You're going to feed us. And it was us and Ivan Salivary, and Jude had no power. He had no pull. He knew somebody that did. That's all it counts.
But what other matchmaker comes out and gets you in the middle of London, in the middle of nowhere, and drags you and takes you for something to eat?
I know, it was a good half. I was correct. It's a good half hour. What do you guys call it? The tube? It was a good half hour tube ride for you. I was like, what's he doing? Like anybody else, like a Joe Silva or Mark Pavlich, would have been like, yeah, good luck. Good luck with that.
It's all part of the service with Jude, isn't it?
Yeah, very service oriented. Very service oriented.
Yeah. Very good. So what about if you got any plans? I know, like you said, you're working on commentary gigs, working on presenting. Any plans to get back in the cage, and might we see you fight in the future?
Well, I have one more fight, as far as I understand, with BAMMA, and I haven't heard anything from them in a while. The rumor is that they're going through some financial restructuring, and so we're just kind of waiting for them to get through the restructuring before they gave me a call, but we still haven't heard. So I have one more obligation I'm supposed to cover with England in BAMMA, but I haven't heard anything. So I'm waiting for that to come up, and then other than that, you know, no one else is really biting. No one else really is paying that much attention, at least to me. So other than waiting on BAMMA to call, I have no other plans. I have nothing else in the works.
And so do you pay much attention to the UK fight scene? Are you aware of some of the stuff that's going on over here locally?
Yeah, I do. I try to pay attention as much as I can, but it's also difficult for us, one, due to time change. Like for you guys, it's, 2:30 in the afternoon?
Yeah.
It's 6:30 in the morning. So the time change throws us off quite a bit because I don't really get the news so early the day of, like a Saturday morning was when the fights are going off, and I'm kind of, you know, I got kids, so I'm running around with the kids, and I don't really get to it till the day after. And so I missed the video, I missed the live show, but then also, we don't really get that much news on the UK over here, which is really weird in the MMA scene, so you really got to hunt for it a little bit, which is unfortunate, because you would think it'd just be thrown at you, you know, because the MMA scene is starting to pick up so much here in the States, that we just get a hold of it, but we don't really, so it's kind of difficult. But yeah, I do try to pay attention as much as I can.
Yeah. And how about, can I get your thoughts on, did you watch the UFC this past weekend?
Hmm?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have it. I was actually at the local Hooters, which is like a really bad breaded chicken wing place,
Yeah.
and they have really somewhat cute waitresses and really tight-fitting clothes, which makes it all the better.
Yeah. So, how good is Jon Jones?
Well, we finally saw the flaw in Jon Jones. We finally saw the fact that that you can get into his head and that you can kind of push him a little bit. The problem is that Rashad had the opportunity to finish him, but didn't do it. Some people agree or disagree about round one. Some say that Rashad won, some say that Jon Jones won round one. Round two was also another toss-up, and then 3, 4, and 5, there's no doubt about it that Jon Jones won those rounds handedly and got better in round 4 and round 5, which are considered the championship rounds.
Right.
Excuse me. The thing with Jon Jones is that he's so long, he's so unorthodox. He's like finding Anderson Silva. He's very tall for the weight class. He's very long for the weight class. You're not really sure which direction he's coming from and how he's coming at you. So you have a difficult time really countering him. Rashad had the style to get inside against Jon and really didn't set up any of his takedowns. So the 3 or 4 takedown attempts that he had, he really didn't do anything with. He just kind of shot. He didn't really set it up, hit him misdirection with a 1-2 like he did in previous posts. When Rashad fought Tito Ortiz, he took Tito down twice by staying outside, hitting with a 1-2, hitting with a 1-2-3, then throwing a 1-2 and chasing him down and hitting a double leg.
Yeah.
All he did is he threw a 1-2 at Jon Jones, threw a 1-2 at Jon Jones, threw a 1-2 at Jon Jones, and then blindly just shoots. Well, Jon is too good. He's too athletic. You can't do that to him. So, we saw the flaw in Jon Jones, but Jon countered very well, did a great job, and stayed with his game plan, never adapted, never changed. And the other thing that Rashad did is he never really kicked. Now, it's hard to kick a guy that's that long, but he never really kicked. I think he
got one off, didn't he? I mean, he got one.
It was really silly. And for a guy that's that much taller than you, and mind you, when I fight, everybody is taller than me. For everyone, I can fight at 155. I'm still going to be short. Benson Henderson is taller than I am. Yeah. BJ Penn and I are the same height. We're both 5'9". Yeah. And those guys are 55 pounders. So if I fought at 155, I'd still be short. But I fight at 185 and 170, and these guys are so much taller than me. When you fight tall guys, you have to use your legs to get inside. You've got to offset guys with their kicks. Rashad didn't do that. Now, the more that Jon fights, the easier it is on paper to figure out how to beat him. It's the same thing with Anderson Silva. It's very easy to beat Anderson Silva on paper. You can sit down and write down your game plan. This is how I'm going to beat Anderson Silva. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to go about it. But then it's very difficult to put yourself in that space of a training camp for 8 weeks and then put yourself in that space of the fight for 5 rounds. And that's kind of what happened with Rashad. He had on paper what to do, but then when he got in that ring, he couldn't do it. After Henderson, to be honest with you, if he beats up Henderson the same way that he beats up Rashad Evans, which I don't think is going to happen, I think it's going to be a much tougher fight with Henderson because Henderson's a lot more mentally strong. He's a knucklehead when it comes to fighting. He'll take a straight elbow to the head and walk inside and grab a hold of you and throw you on the ground. I still think Jon Jones beats Henderson. After the Henderson fight, there's nobody else left in the weight class. There is no other challenge. The only challenge he has is if Anderson Silva comes up to 205 that fights him, or if Jon Jones moves up to heavyweight. That's the only challenge that's left. And the problem is that Jon is kind of stuck in the middle. He's like a Randy Couture heavyweight where his natural body weight's around 120 or 225, 230. When he fought Rashad, he walked in, he was 225. And that night in the ring, and that's kind of what's going to happen to him when he fights. When he fights Henderson that night, he'll be 225, but he's too small ability to be a heavyweight, to be an effective heavyweight, because everybody now, like Mir, Dos Santos, Kane, all those guys are 250, 260, 265. So Jon could kill the heavyweight. So Jon's a tweener, but he's got one more fight, and he's pretty much done. There's no one else left in the weight class for him to beat up.
Yeah, no, I agree. Really good insight. We've got to let you go. We're just about out of time for this segment. Frank, we really, really appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. We'll really look forward to you coming over for the MMA show live, and we'll catch up with you again there. Obviously, when you're over, we'd love to have you in studio, have another chat. Really, really good to talk to you.
Love to come in.
Thanks, Frank. Good to talk to you.
Take care, man. Take care.
Frank Trigg.
What a guy.
We get all the best guys down.
Absolutely.
I absolutely love the digital wall aspect of our show because it gives us the ability to talk to these guys that are in America and that are that are different time zones, and it just opens the world, doesn't it?
The internet's bringing the world together.
You heard it here first, folks. All right, so join us when we come back. We're going to be talking to Jude. We're going to be talking about matchmaking and what makes a good fight. We'll be right back on Sports Tonight Live presents The Cage. Welcome back to The Cage on Sports Tonight Live. My next guest, one of the best matchmakers in the business, Jude Samuel. Jude, really, really glad you could take the time out to come and talk to us today. You've been around the MMA scene for quite a while. You're a matchmaker for one of the biggest promotions in the country. Give us a little bit about your background and what brought you to MMA.
My background's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I got my black belt from Mauricio Gomez, Roger Grace's father, quite a while back now. It's actually quite a while back now.
Would you say some years?
Yeah, some years. And I've always been in and around martial arts anyway. And I used to organise grappling tournaments and stuff like that for quite a few years as well, and kind of tried to help the jiu-jitsu scene in this country kind of grow up just a bit more. And then it's just like a natural progression, basically, from what I used to do, to now.
Yeah, and your face is certainly one of the first ones that I came to know when I first got involved in UK MMA. And now you're matchmaker for BAMMA. How's that going? Tell us a little bit about what brought you to the matchmaking position there.
It's to be honest, it's a dream job, actually. Yeah. Bar all the hiccups and the ups and downs and stuff like that, it is a dream job. It's brilliant. It's a good company to work for, and you get to with regards to what BAMMA is actually doing and what they're planning and stuff and going forward, and they're moving pretty quickly. We're only 9 shows in, and BAMMA 10's around the corner. Yeah. But what the company itself has achieved is actually on a scale of things, actually pretty enormous. But so my involvement in it is just it's wonderful. It's great. It's great.
One of the things that I like about BAMMA, and I think I'm right in saying this, is you're one of the promotions, one of the few promotions that don't rely on fighters to sell tickets. So when you're matchmaking, you're not necessarily saying this guy's a good ticket seller, this guy's a good ticket seller. Let's put them together because then we'll sell lots of tickets. But you're looking at skill sets, you're looking at records, you're looking at what makes a good fight.
What makes a good fight? From my perspective, I can't say from other matchmakers' perspective. I think one of the things that gives me the insight is that I still run my jiu-jitsu academy. I still teach. One of the things that actually keeps me fresh with regards to jiu-jitsu, and it's one of the kind of, you could say, the learning processes that I adhere to, basically, is that I might teach jiu-jitsu, but I've got to teach guys jiu-jitsu for MMA. I've got to teach guys jiu-jitsu for no gi, and these guys, my academy is like Switzerland, basically. There's no politics. The guys come from all different academies and come down to train. And if you jump on the mat, see guys from Team Titan, guys from Tsunami, guys from London Shoe, and from different gyms, and they come together, and basically it's like a melting pot. And so what I see on the mat, is that all these guys have different skill sets. They bring different things to the plate, different body types, etc. If you get 2 guys that are good at striking, it's not necessarily that they're going to end up in a big striking war.
Right.
Some people's, you got some guys that you could put fighter A against fighter B, based on their record and based how they've performed in the past. But you got guys, say, like, for instance, like Jim Moorhead is a really good example. He steps up to the plate depending on who his opponent is.
Right. Yeah.
When he fought, Frank Trigg, people, I remember reading all the things about it and stuff like that, and the wave was against him. He was the underdog in that fight. Yeah. And then Joe Villaseñor, look what he did to Joe Villaseñor. It was just amazing. He's one of those guys who steps up to the plate. So you've got fighters like that, and then you've got fighters who stick to their normal, regime, what they do. They stick to what they're good at, And so you've got to take all those things into consideration, head, skill set, how to train, etc. So, yeah.
And I got to ask you mentioned some guys from Tsunami come over and they train with your gym. So how does your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fare against Gypsy Jiu-Jitsu?
Have you ever given anyone a pink belt?
It's all jiu-jitsu at the end of the day. It's all jiu-jitsu.
Exactly. It's really interesting hearing that, because a lot of people just, they look at like UFC fights and they think, oh, well, why don't they just put these 2 guys together? I mean, how many times have we seen 2, guys who are jiu-jitsu guys put together, and then we end up with a bad kickboxing match? Or you get 2 guys who have got supposed K1 level striking, and neither of them want to engage with each other.
Rashad and Jones at the weekend, they didn't go to the ground at all, did they?
Exactly. I mean, I've been telling, I watched that fight with a couple of guys who are big fight fans and fighters, and a couple of guys who don't really know anything about MMA, and they were saying, well, what's this guy's skill set? I was like, well, he's a really good wrestler, and he's a really good wrestler. So they said, oh, this one's going to be on the floor then. And then like you see a guy throwing jabs and elbows and all kinds of crazy stuff. There's so much more to it than just saying, striker versus striker, that'll be a good striking match, or vice versa.
Frank's take on that fight was really interesting to hear how he would strategize. And like I say this almost every week, but the thing that I like is about this show is getting to talk to fighters and kind of get inside their head and find out not only as fighters but as fans and strategists how they handle things.
I think people who are kind of like on that inner track of the sport and the really hardcore fans probably did appreciate that fight a lot more. So one of the guys I was watching it with, we were both sat there like, whoa, how's he done that? Crazy techniques, seeing how he could get inside and land those elbows. Whereas the guys who weren't really into MMA were kind of like, well, this isn't as big as you guys said it was going to be.
Well, the key is it is mixed martial arts.
Yeah, of course.
It is mixed martial arts, and the majority of the game is actually being able to implement your strategy against your opponent, you know, and view them, see what they do, see what they're good at, and try to predict what they're going to do against what you're going to do, you know. And the guys out there, they're smart guys, I think there's, I do think sometimes people underestimate, the fighters and probably don't give them much respect that they duly deserve.
No, I agree.
Because those guys are smart. They know exactly what to do. They know, like, escape from the kimono, boom, stand up, take them down, bang, 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 and implement my game on top. So, it's quite interesting from my point of view, from a coach, but also from a matchmaker. It's quite interesting to see fighters develop and grow. It's quite interesting to see them fight, the guys from Spiked Management, for instance, and they devise a whole game plan for Brad Pickett for this fight that he just had, and just to see that game plan, being implemented and stuff like that, and see how Brad did and developed, it's like looking at the fight and I just went, wow. Yeah.
Well,
I just went,
that's
wow,
why for me,
good.
Randy Couture is one of the best of all time, because he was never the biggest guy, never the strongest, never the fastest, never the best boxer, but he was the guy who imposed his game plan. And you knew going into that fight that he knew exactly what to plan for in every situation. He knew everything his opponent was going to throw at him, and he knew how to deal with it. And
the thing about Randy is whenever you see him in an interview and they'll say, oh, what do you think about fighting Chuck Liddell? What do you think about fighting Tito? Or what do you think about fighting whoever? He says, well, this guy gives me an interesting set of problems.
Yeah.
It's always an interesting set of problems, right? So he's... and I've said it on here before, I think that the thing that makes a martial artist, a mixed martial artist, a good mixed martial artist, is the fact that they've got a catalog of moves and things in their head, and how fast can they scroll through that and, yep, this is going to work, yep, this is going to work. I think, well, the fight that you guys showed on Channel 5, Ninja and Tom Watson, that's one of my favorite fights of all time. And I think that Tom absolutely rose to the occasion and just did the work that night. And I think it was, good game plan.
That fight that night was actually amazing.
Yeah,
it was amazing. It's BAMMA 6 and BAMMA 4. I almost went deaf. Actually, it's just the crowd. The crowd was really, really, really amazing. The support for Tom is really good. You know? And the one good thing about it's just another thing going back to kind of like matchmaking as well. You have to also, you take a fighter, he might be good, but can he entertain? Tom is articulate. He can entertain. He's got good walk on and stuff like that. And then aside from that, he can fight. As well.
Yeah.
He's
Well, again, I think some of the things that you guys are doing at BAMMA that's interesting and that are the right things, in my opinion, is you're building personality. I mean, people like to get behind people, right? So you're not necessarily building the promotion. You're not necessarily building, that image, but you're building personalities in fighters. And then the promotion builds itself.
Well, there has to be an end game to everything. You see sometimes I view like some promotions and stuff like that. The guys fight, but there is no kind of like end game to it, to where they're going. The whole thing has to be a story that's being built. We haven't put on like loads and loads of shows, but I can pick out a guy from BAMMA 2 and BAMMA 3 and bring him up to BAMMA 10, and there's a story that's already been built.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a story that's already been in place. So like Frank just talked about him coming back on BAMMA. Stick Frank in on the next BAMMA or the BAMMA after, or whatever. There's a story that I still can put in place. So it's all about the end game. It's all about whether you're going to be the champion. It's all about whether you're going to beat this person who beat you before. There's always something to build, and you can see with the UFC, they've got that tied down to the nth degree.
Yeah.
So like Jon Jones, Rashad, that was a story that's just been going on for 18 months. It's boom, 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 to culminate in this.
Well, that's an aspect of matchmaking that a lot of people don't necessarily think about. Like you said, people watch fights and say, why don't they just put that guy against that guy? Well, because there's a story that's got to build. Because at the end of the day, you're in business to build these fighters, and then in turn they build your promotion.
Absolutely, it's about yes, it's about the sport, and yes, it's about the the sport and its recognition to the the worldwide audience. But also, it's about entertainment.
Yeah.
It could be the best sport in the world, but if it's not entertaining, why watch it?
How many times have we talked about that balance, about the guys who are remembered, guys like Colin Fletcher? And, you look at the biggest fights in the history of the sport, they've all had a storyline behind them. Ortiz versus Shamrock, that first fight they had at UFC 40, that had been building up for years with Tito taking out all Ken's guys and the clash of personalities. And then that was the biggest fight in the sport at the time. And when they did the rematch years and years later, that was another huge fight. And these are the ones that get remembered, Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir. Brock Lesnar might not have been the best fighter or the best sportsman or whatever, but that story of him coming in from wrestling and being the bad guy and taking over the UFC was what sold tickets at the end of the day.
Well, exactly. I think that's all really good stuff and all things that most people just don't think about when they start thinking about fight. Because you're right. At the end of the day, it is a sport. It is an event. It is a promotion, and it is entertainment. So we're out of time for this segment. We always run out of time. So, join us when we come back on Sports Night Live presents The Cage. We're going to talk all about the next UFC coming up this weekend. Welcome back to The Cage on Sports Night Live. I think you spent several hours on the phone yesterday, Brad, listening to everything that's going on with Overeem and Peds in the sport. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's 4.5 hours of my life that I'm never going to get back, unfortunately. Sat listening to a full Nevada State Athletic Commission hearing. Wow, it was incredible. As my parents have said to me many, many times, I'm not upset, I'm just disappointed. Really, really disappointed in Alistair Overeem, and also disappointed in the Nevada State Athletic Commission as well. Obviously, the upshot of this whole thing now is that Overeem's license application was denied yesterday after a very, very lengthy proceeding. I think they were talking to him specifically or talking about his case specifically for nearly 2 hours. Which was phenomenal. I don't think that's ever happened before, to my knowledge, in MMA at least. Basically, he turned up yesterday with his lawyer and his doctor, and he was going to ask for a continuance, so a 6-week gap to build up a medical case. In his defence, he said that he got an anti-inflammatory drug from a doctor. Without his knowledge, that drug had been mixed with testosterone. The testosterone can make anti-inflammatories act faster and better. He didn't have a licence at this time. And as he said, he didn't know, so technically he thought he'd done nothing wrong. The doctor that he brought with him to testify was like Dr. Nick from The Simpsons. I genuinely expected this guy to go, "Hi, everybody," but it didn't happen. But it was honestly, it was cringeworthy. When you're watching something and you just want it to stop.
Yeah.
It was absolutely terrible. They started pulling this guy up on the facts that he'd said. He couldn't remember his answers. He started just coming out with to my knowledge, yes, to my knowledge, basically non-answers. And it was just kind of farcical. Now, what they normally do when they deny your application is obviously he didn't have a license to suspend. So what they normally do in that situation is they prevent you from reapplying for 12 months. For some reason, they are going to let him reapply in 9 months' time. I cannot fathom why that is. So here you've got a guy who was told last time that he missed a drug test. We'll license you conditionally for 1 fight. A part of that license, you have to pass 2 drug tests. He fails the first one, and they now let him reapply in 9 months' time. To me, it's ridiculous that this is a guy who, whether he knew or not, it doesn't matter. The athlete is responsible for what's in their body. He admitted that, and they still kind of let him off with wrapped knuckles. Yeah.
I think that's, we saw Cyborg similar. What's the difference between Overeem and Diaz?
Well, I think Nick Diaz is a guy who just doesn't care. I really don't think he's bothered. He's happy to go and run triathlons. Overeem, I'm just so disappointed in the guy. It's just a shame. It's just a shame. But I think it brings to the spotlight the issue of PEDs, which is a huge issue. I mean, if you look at athletics, that's probably one of the most rigorously tested fields of sport, especially at the Olympic level.
Sure.
If you get banned in athletics, you get banned for life. If you get done for steroids, that is it. You're finished. And the theory behind that is if you use steroids to make yourself bigger, even if you don't use them again, you have muscle memory, and your body will be able to get bigger than it naturally would have. Yeah. So the theory there, which I kind of agree with, is okay, this guy's cheated. He'll forever reap the benefits of that. So suspend him for life. But to counter that, you've got young guys in MMA who are being brought in. They might not be the smartest guy in the world. They might be blinded by the lights of the UFC, for example. and they're going to have the trainers say, oh, take this supplement, take this. Is that legal? Well, everyone else is taking it, so you should take it. Do we ban that guy for life if he doesn't know any better? It's a really interesting toss-up for me.
Yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts on PEDs in the sport, Jude?
Oh, I think we should have 2 divisions. No, I think the thing is I think MMA is in a bit of a quandary at the present moment in time. Just there on a friend of mine actually called Winston Gordon actually is on the British Judo Olympic team. He was stating the other day exactly what he has to do basically. Like he has to tell the British committee where he's training, what time he's training. If he has to go somewhere else that is going to be outside there, he has to inform them. Now, I think it's now within an hour of where he's going to be, so they can go and do spot checks.
Yeah.
And he goes, half of that, guys are just afraid. They might be given the opportunity to take the stuff, but they're afraid now because they don't know who the hell's going to turn up, when they're going to turn up. So I think having a system like that in place might help it. And might cut it down, but the other side of it is also when guys do get caught, is how it's been dealt with as well. So there's I am not a commission guy, but all I can state is actually what other industries are doing, what athletics are doing, what the Olympics are doing. I think the system that they do have with regards to the Olympics is very, very good. Is the sport MMA big enough to actually,
that's the thing, isn't it?
Have that. I'm not too sure, not just yet.
Probably not
just yet, but in the future, I think.
Like many things, at the end of the day, it comes down to money. These drug tests are relatively expensive. And the point is, you can't just have them for the UFC. If it's in California or Nevada, it's every promoter who does it. So the commission takes a 5 to 8% cut of the gate for a UFC, for example. That's the tax they use. That's how they're funded. Should they then have to spend that money testing fighters, or is it on the promoter's head? Now, the UFC can afford it, but can the guy who's running a show for 300 people,
no, you're absolutely right.
Can he afford it? That's going to run a lot of small MMA promoters out of business, which is bad for the sport.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, so old Overeem, well, I guess time will tell.
It's crazy, because I've been following Overeem for years. I grew up in Holland. I saw this guy fight when he was about 18 or 19, and he was huge then as well. Yeah. So it's kind of funny, because it's not a situation where he was always really small and now he's got really big. He used to fight at like 230 pounds when he was 19, so interesting. But yes, I am disappointed in Alistair Overeem.
Well, speaking of people that are big in the sport, maybe not big in stature, but big in personality, big announcement at UFC, Sonnen versus Silva coming up.
Can't wait. I cannot wait. That man can do no wrong in my eyes. He can do no wrong. Absolutely fantastic.
So how do you see that one going then?
I think Chael Sonnen is going to beat him up for 5 rounds again.
Do you really?
I genuinely do.
I'm going to put some money in that for you, man.
Yeah, look at Jude.
Okay. Absolutely.
I'm going for Silva.
Lose the shirt off my back probably now. But no, I don't know. I think he did it before. Nobody expected him to. I've heard from a very, very reliable source that Anderson Silva nearly retired before this fight when he found out that he wasn't going to fight in Brazil. And the same person tells me that there's a good chance he'll retire after it, win or lose.
Yeah.
And when I hear those things about a fighter, sometimes you've got to take them with a pinch of salt, but also I wonder where that guy's mindset is.
Yeah.
And I think Sonnen, this is now or never for him. I think he's
right.
sold himself to that point where if he does lose this one, he probably will leave the UFC forever, like he promised.
I think we've got a fantastic card top to bottom here. I remember talking to somebody and they said, the thing about Sonnen is he did beat Silva up for 5 rounds and still found a way to lose the fight.
Well, yeah.
So as much as I like Sonnen, I got to go Silva with this one. I think the Bisping-Bosch, I think that's another watershed fight. I think that here's 2 guys that have got a lot to prove. Bosch's last outing was amazing. I think Bisping's the kind of guy that we see get better and better and better every time, so I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Bisping, for me, is possibly the most underrated fighter in the sport. I think he's a top 3 middleweight, arguably top 2, because I think he beat Chael Sonnen.
I second that. I think Bisping it's really weird, actually, how the wave is against Bisping. He's done so well. Well. He's done really, really well.
I think the thing about Mike too is, we talk about sort of strategies in a fight. I think that Mike's also got a career strategy, doesn't he? Because he's not rushed into anything. He's not, somebody says, you want a title? Well, not yet. You ready for title? No, not yet.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's getting some of that experience. He's getting, like I said, getting into some deep water. And I think when his time comes, I think he's a good chance for first British champion.
Not picks, but the guys that he fights, you can see a definite career progression. If you look up his, the guys that he's fought against, how he's done against this guy, how he's done against this guy, and each time he just gets better and better and better and better. I've got him down for this fight actually.
Yeah, I agree. And Franklin Kung Lee, that's another one that's really hard for me to pick because I love both those guys.
It's interesting. I mean, Franklin versus Kung Lee and Ortiz versus Griffin, these aren't fights that mean a whole lot. Neither guy's going to be getting a title shot off the back of these fights. But they're guys who are, almost legends in the sport. Certainly Franklin and Griffin, future legends. Ortiz, arguably, Hall of Fame as soon as he retires.
Yeah, definitely.
And Kung Lee's a guy who I've never particularly rated as a mixed martial artist, but as a striker, phenomenal. Yeah. And, these are the kind of marquee fights for me. This card, for me, probably second to UFC 100 in one of the best top-to-bottom ones they've ever put together. Yeah. And I think you need a couple of marquee fights as well. People want to see Ortiz, Griffin, Franklin and Kung Lee.
I think Ortiz-Griffin is going to be a fantastic fight. I think that fight is all about the entertainment, isn't it? Because both of those guys, I mean, they're supreme entertainers.
Well, I think, harking back to what we were saying earlier about entertainment, I think it should be called UFC 148. That's entertainment.
Yeah.
Because, but it's true, I think it's probably one of the best cards I've actually ever produced.
Yeah.
Cruz versus Faber as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what a fight. Definitely. They're second. I mean, a lot of people think it's Cruz versus Faber too. Obviously, they fought a long time ago when Faber actually beat Dominic Cruz. But, both guys completely different fighters now. We saw how good they both were last time out. This one's going to be the same kind of fight. It's going to be fantastic.
I agree. Yeah. That's it. We're out of time again. God, this hour just goes so fast. Jude, I'm so glad that you finally came down. We've been trying to get you in the studio forever. Really pleased that you came and you're here today. Brad, missed you last week. Glad you're back.
Glad to be here.
Glad I'm back.
Glad you're back.
Yeah. So lots of good stuff. Tomorrow, or next week rather, lots and lots of more stuff to talk about. So join us next week right here on Sports Night Live presents The Cage.